I want to give you 6 reasons tonight why I believe in God. 6 reasons why I believe in God. The first one is that God is the best explanation for the origin of the universe. God is not the only explanation for the origin of the universe. The Big Bang is also a possible explanation for the origin of the universe. But I want to tell you that God is the best explanation. The best explanation for the origin of the universe. If I said, I've just drove here tonight in a brand new motor car, it's outside right now, and it's got all the latest technology on it. Oh, and by the way, it just appeared out of nowhere. It happened by chance. People would laugh. You've just laughed now. Everybody would laugh. They said, John, you've gone loony or something. If I pointed to a building, such as this one, for example, well, not quite, a building that has got all the latest mod cons and all the latest utilities, such as gas, electricity, solar panels, etc. And I said, do you know that building over there? It just happened. It just appeared out of nowhere. It happened by random chance. You'd all laugh. I can hear some of you snickering right now. And yet, when we're led to believe, or we are led to believe, that this universe, with all its intricacies, far more intricate than a motor car that I can describe, or a house with all the mod cons, with all the intricacies in this universe, with us as human beings, intelligent life, with our fantastic body parts, which right now are wearing out for me pretty fast, but we've got eyes, ears, brains, and all the other organs that work in sync with each other to keep us alive. If someone said, all this happened by a random chance, no one would laugh. No one would laugh. And the reason that no one would laugh is this. Because there's a false logic going around in this day and age which says that, well, the scientists say so, and the scientists are clever men, so therefore they must be right, and that is a false logic. Being a clever man doesn't make you right in everything you say and do. Far from it. Common sense tells us that a motor car with the latest technology must have a designer and must have a creator. It must have. Common sense tells us that. Common sense tells us that a house, a brand new house with all the mod cons in it, must have a designer and it must have a builder. Common sense tells us that. I don't need to be a mathematical genius like Edwin to figure that one out. I can see that with my own eyes and understand it with my own common sense. Why can't we use the same common sense that we use for the motor car, for the house, about this universe of ours and the intelligent life that is on this earth with all the wonders of it all? You know, we and the universe are far more complex and complicated than any motor car or any house. Far more complicated. Secondly, the reason I believe in God is that God is the best explanation for the fine-tuning in the universe. He's not the only explanation, but he's the best explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe. I'll explain to you what the fine-tuning of the universe is all about. I've mentioned this before. If we were any closer to the sun than we are, we would fry. If we were any farther away from the sun than what we are, we would freeze. The only reason this planet can support intelligent life is the exact position we are from the sun, right? Now, if that distance is so critical to support intelligent life, surely this suggests a designer and a creator. Throughout the earth we have 4 seasons that follow one another. I'm not even going to attempt to say them. You all know what the 4 seasons are because I'll get them muddled up. Oh, I've written them down. Summer, autumn, winter and spring. And they always follow. They've always followed. We have 2 time periods. We have the day and we have the night. And there are so many other things that we could mention that we would call the fine-tuning of the universe. All this suggests to me there has to be a designer. There has to be someone that created all this and fine-tuned it. You know, no car owner, and many of us are car owners in this place tonight, no car owner relies upon chance to tune his car engine. Do you? Is anybody who relies upon chance to do that? No. He relies upon an engineer. Common sense will tell you that. So how can we say that our world is fine-tuned by chance? I can no longer believe that. I believe it has to have a designer. Thirdly, God is the best explanation for the existence of objective moral values in the world today. Not the only explanation, but the best explanation for objective moral values that's in the world today. I want to ask the question, who created the whole idea of objective moral values? Some people say it's a societal thing, that we pass it on to one another. We teach one another and pass it on. I wonder. When I look at this world today, I see so much evil. When I examine history and modern day news, all I see is corruption amongst men. And all this to me suggests that there is evidence that man would be incapable of creating and sustaining objective moral values. He may pass them on one to the other, but he certainly has not created them. In my mind, such values have to come from a far higher source than ourselves. A far higher source. It seems to me that for a man to even preach, if you like, or state any kind of objective moral values would be sheer hypocrisy. How many of our world leaders today are guilty of mass murder? It's going on right now. It's going on right now. How many of our leaders are guilty of committing adultery and unfaithfulness? How many have taken bribes or profited from their positions in politics? This is what we're seeing today. Tell me, where is there a man perfect enough to create objective moral values? Who is such a man? Can there be such a man? I've never met one, I've never read about one, I've never come across one. Historically, and what we're seeing around the world today, is that man goes for the lowest common denominator when it comes to moral values. Only God. There is one man actually who can create objective moral values. His name is Jesus. He's the only man that can, because he's the only perfect man. He's the only person above reproach. And only someone above reproach would ever be listened to as far as objective moral values are concerned. Fourthly, to me, God is the best explanation for the historical facts about the life, death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now we know it's an historical fact that a man called Jesus lived on this earth some 2,000 years ago. Even secular historians have commented on this man in their writings. And they've said that he obviously performed extraordinary acts that we would call miracles. He healed the sick, he raised the dead. He cast out demons, he set people free wherever he went. And then, finally, he gave himself over to a cruel death. He said himself, no man can take my life from me. I give it, I offer it. He offered it for you and for me, for all of us. But on the third day, he rose from the dead. And then he gave the evidence to over 500 people. He said, here I am, I'm alive. Jesus is the evidence that there is a loving God who wants to interfere in the sufferings of fallen mankind. Somebody wrote to me and said, John, I want to become a Christian, but I can't get over the fact that God wants to send me to hell. I'm stuck with this thought that God wants to send me to hell. And I wrote back, And I said, no, God doesn't want to send you to hell. You've got it wrong. You're misunderstanding. You send yourself to hell. Hell was never created for us. It was created for the devil and his angels. But when we started following the devil, we send ourselves to hell. It's not something that God wants to do or does. We do it ourselves. God doesn't need our help in sending us to hell. We're very accomplished at doing that ourselves. And I said, what you've got to do is overlook your negatives about God. Start seeing him for what he is. He put up this wonderful plan to redeem us, to save us, to rescue us. Now let that be your focus. Not the fact he wants to send you to hell, which he doesn't. But you've got to swallow your pride and you've got to accept that salvation that Christ offers to you. You know, when we examine the prophecies about Jesus Christ, some of them hundreds and hundreds of years before he ever set foot on this earth. One was his manner of birth, where he would be born, and that he would be born of a virgin. The second one was about the murder, the prophesied, forecasted murder of all the children in Israel as a result of this man's birth. The prophecy that he would escape and go down to Egypt. And then he would return and be brought up in Nazareth. The ministry of miracles Isaiah spoke about hundreds of years before. His death and resurrection are all in the prophets. All of these things that we know about Jesus were prophesied some hundreds of years before they happened. Now, I'd like to know the odds. I think Nigel once gave us some odds on this, didn't he? The odds of this man coming and fulfilling all of the prophecies written about him. For example, he could not have possibly, by his own determination, fulfilled the place of his birth, or to be born by a virgin. He could not have done that. Nor could he have fulfilled by his own determination that his dad would take him down to Egypt and they would flee there, then return and live in Nazareth. The odds against all these predictions being fulfilled in this one man would be, you couldn't count the odds, could you? Impossible odds. The fifth reason why I believe there's a God is this. History is full of men and women who claim to have had an experience with the living Christ. History is full of such reports. It could, of course, be argued, and would be argued by the atheistic society, that all these people are delusional and have psychiatric disorders. They would certainly argue this, and it could well be that some people would say this. Strange thing though, isn't it, that so many people gave their lives for this man. After becoming a Christian, gave their lives. Nigel in here yesterday talked about the time when people were fed to the lions and suffered all kinds of horrific and painful and wicked deaths because of their faith in this man, Jesus Christ. Is that being delusional? I was an atheist. I had no desires for religion. The night I became a Christian, I was not drunk. I hadn't touched a drop. I hadn't been on drugs. I've never taken drugs. Well, I can't say I did once take some drugs. But certainly not going back to the time I became a Christian. And I had a life-changing experience with the living Christ. And you know, no amount of clever arguments, I don't care how many black holes people would tell me to peer into, and how many mathematical equations, or what kind of psychology or scientific arguments they would use, no one can convince me other than I had an experience with the living Jesus Christ. No one can do that. On pain of death, I could never be convinced otherwise. And if my experience of meeting Jesus Christ is a delusion or a psychiatric disorder, then all I can say is give me more. Give me more of this disorder, because it's been the best thing that's ever happened to my life. Number 6. God is the best explanation for what has happened to the land of Israel, or the people of Israel, the Israelites, in the past and right now. God is the best explanation for what has happened and what is happening to them right now. I've recently been going through the prophetic books. It's really been good. Isaiah I studied first, and then Jeremiah. I've told you that I study the prophets from the point of view of what's taking place in the world today. But I don't often just sit down and read through it like a newspaper. And I decided I would do that. I'd read the book of Isaiah just as if I was reading a newspaper. And it was a wonderful experience. And now I've just completed Jeremiah. And again, it's had this impact upon me that when Israel was living in relative peace and safety and prosperity, along came these prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah and so many other prophets and denounced these people as being wicked and unfaithful to their God. He said, all I've done for you, and now you turn into idols. So for all of your rest and peace and ease and wealth, I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to send you away into exile. Now, this was said before it happened, bearing in mind. And I will send you away, and I will send you to the four corners of the earth. Wow. What's the odds of such predictions coming true? Very slim. With the people that were doing well. They were doing okay, thank you very much. They were prosperous, they were peaceful. And then God said, and after I've scattered you to the four corners of the earth, guess what? I'm going to bring you back again. I'm going to bring you back. Now, if the odds against that prediction of sending them out would be impossible, the odds of bringing them back after a couple of thousand years would be ultra impossible. It could not happen. But remember that the prophets, long before it happened, said that it would happen. And it's happened. It's happened in graphic detail. I was over in Crete a few weeks ago talking with Israelis, and they didn't seem to understand what was taking place with them, what was happening to them. And I said to them, don't you read the prophets? Don't you study the prophets? It's all in there. What's happened to you in the past, your exile, what's happened to you now in bringing you back, it's all in there, spoken of by the prophets. Get into the Old Testament. That's what we call it anyway. And there you will find all the answers. So the prophecies concerning the Christ that would come and the way they were fulfilled by this man Jesus, and the prophecies about Israel, that they would be sent out to the four corners of the earth, then they would be regathered back into Israel again, but just further compelling evidence that there is a God. Okay, now the reason for this talk is because recently I listened to a debate between a man called William Lane Craig, who is the most formidable opponent of atheism today. He's a doctor of philosophy and he's been debating with various atheists. And so I did a video based upon his 5 points, and they're his points that I've used tonight. God is the best explanation for the origin of the universe. God is the best explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe. God is the best explanation for the existence of objective moral values in the world today. And God is the best explanation for the historical facts about the life, death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. His idea about Israel was not his. That's my idea. I've included that. I'm surprised actually he hasn't used it, but then I don't think he wants to get it. He deals with the scientific and philosophical, not the prophetic. So I've included that myself. So I did a talk and I videoed it and I stuck it on the internet. I didn't include the 6th point about Israel. I just stuck to the 5 points of Dr. Craig. About 7 o'clock last Thursday night, it went on the internet, on YouTube. I store everything on YouTube. To me it's just a storage place, and then I put it onto the website and I also put it onto Facebook. And it's on Facebook that basically I get the most comments. I have never had a comment from YouTube about any video I have ever done. Come the Friday morning, I switch my BlackBerry on, and of course it brings in all my emails. I don't necessarily deal with them on the BlackBerry, I deal with them on the computer, but at least it tells me what I've got. And it was 89, oh no, sorry. The BlackBerry was just full of comments from YouTube. I had 89 viewings on that video within the space of, what, 12 hours? 89 viewings, that's a record, certainly for me. I had dozens of emails from people passing comments. And some of them were, one came from an atheistic society who blasted me for daring to suggest there might be a God. But most of the emails were very supportive. And people were saying, I want to subscribe to your YouTube site. I've got no end of subscribers now. And then a lot of them came back with further comments. Can we become friends? So I've now got friends, I don't even know the names because they use pseudonyms on YouTube. And I know one guy's from Venezuela because he did tell me that. He said, excuse my poor English, but I live in Venezuela. So I wrote him a message back in Spanish. I checked before I came out today. I've now got 300 hits. 300 hits and still climbing. And I've now got 200 comments. And I've had to give up answering some of the comments. Some of the comments I answered. Some of the fiercest atheists, I answered them. I gave them what I thought was a suitable comment. I've had to give up. I can't cope. I need a secretary. Please help. I phoned Mike Price up and I said, Mike, this is obviously the way forward. I've never had this kind of feedback before. So we're talking about how we might capitalise on that. I want to say, and most of you who know me will know that I am not a scientist and I am not a philosopher. But I was an atheist. And I used to preach that if there is a God, he must be a monster. Way before some of these people I've now been introduced to, because that's what the atheist, that's his bottom line. He always comes back with this. When he runs out of argument, he will tell you, well, if there is a God, he's got to be a monster. Well, I know all about this because I used to preach that kind of rubbish myself. But I became a Christian because I experienced the living Jesus Christ. That's why I turned from being an atheist to be a Christian, because I had an experience with Jesus Christ. Do you know it is possible scientifically to analyse the ingredients of a chocolate cake, and from that analysis we could roughly determine how the cake should taste? That's what science can do. Right? But it's not until we take a bite of the cake and experience the fullness of its deliciousness that we understand how it really does taste. And it's the same thing with Jesus Christ. Until you've tasted of him, until you've experienced him, you cannot possibly make a sound judgment about him. I don't care how intelligent someone is, I don't care how many degrees in philosophy or science, if they do not try Jesus Christ, they will never ever know anything about him. Listen to this from the book of Psalms. Psalm 111 verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now listen to these words. All who follow his precepts have good understanding. All who follow. I'll finish by saying this. You can't judge God by intellect. You can't find God by intellect alone. According to the early Hebraic education system, and it's repeated in this psalm, God has to be obeyed, God has to be followed in order to gain understanding about him. It's something we have to do in order to understand him. Now we try and understand him first. I'm going to do a talk on this, probably the next one for the internet. Now we try and understand him first. And we put up all kinds of conditions. If I can't understand him, I will not follow him. That's not the way it was taught in the beginning. Follow him and understand. You will be given understanding as you follow. I followed Jesus Christ. I have never, ever, in all my life, after being a Christian for almost 50 years, this year This year I will have been a Christian for 50 years, right? In all those 50 years I have never once understood God or Jesus Christ. For the life of me, I cannot understand him. But my experience with him has been phenomenal. He's turned my life around. I've got opportunities and had opportunities, and no doubt some more will come, that I would never have had I not followed Jesus Christ. It's in the following that we gain the understanding. But we will never understand him in any scientific or mathematical way or philosophical way. Of course, to the atheist, and I'll finish with this remark, to the atheist, when we talk about, oh, you've got to follow him to be given understanding, this just, it gives him further proof that God is a monster, and they condemn the principles. Why should I have to follow him in order to understand? So it's just further proof to them that he is a monster. But to the wise in heart, it becomes life everlasting. Amen. Amen. Praise God.